Hi, welcome to the Andrew Buckle book review of Our Artists at War. This is American comics, as it says very clearly there, American comics, and it's by Richard J. Arndt, and Stephen Fears, and it's from Twomorrows. Twomorrows been bringing out loads of great ones, and as always, of course, they've got their lovely list of their current stuff at the back. MLJ, Companion, Severin, Monster Mash, etc. And always great to get. However, this is 160 pages, and the paper quality seems to be slightly different. I don't know what it is. Can't put my finger on it totally. Obviously, I literally am putting my finger on it, but slightly different. It's got a slight different feel to it. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but it's warped. You can see there, just as I hold it up, you can see the warping, which is not good. However, the binding all's fine, standard sort of glue bun. I'm certain it's going to be fine for many years. But I've noticed that with lots of books recently. Lots of books I seem to be getting are getting very, very warped, which, I don't know. Old books were always warped, so it's not a big deal, but it's just occasionally you look and think, well, that's strange, it's warped already. What's it going to be like in 100 years' time? Not that I'm going to worry about it too much at that point. However, what's it got in this book? And it's just, of course, war. American ones. So you've got DC Comics, Fawcett Comics, EC Comics, of course, and you can see the breakdown there. You've got the breakdown. So EC War Comics, you've got the DC Big Five, War Comics in the early 60s, Blazing Combat, Charlton, and so on and so on. And also it covers later on as well. So it's not just, you know, like 60s and 70s. We're talking into Jack Kirby, obviously, as well, but it goes into Garth Ennis, etc. And so it does cover sort of later stuff, which is quite nice. And there's some really good war books that have come out. Some very good ones that unfortunately are already out of print, because I'm looking through this thinking, you know what, that would be a great one. Checked up, out of print already. However, it does go all the way back to 1066, and that definitely is out of print because, well, you've got the Bayeux Tapestry. So Battle of Hastings, of course, 1066. Why not go all the way back to the source material? Well, this one, Action Comics, of course, most of the DC comics, lots of the comics from all the different companies back in the 40s were war comics. I mean, they were not all the major characters. Batman, of course, probably didn't go off to war particularly, but you had some of the other characters were often whizzing off to fighting against Nazis, and if they weren't fighting them in Germany, they were fighting them on, obviously, there was fifth columnists or whatever. However, let's get on to the next area. But there's one very big, and there's probably other exceptions as well that have been missed out of this, Atlas Comics. Atlas Comics, virtually hardly a mention, a bit of brief mention, but you've got EC Comics, of course, some of the finest. EC Comics, and I've got the examples here that are worth checking out, but if you can't get these ones, I would suggest the Fantagraphics, black and white, of course, or the Dark Horse ones. Dark Horse should be, and they're bringing them out in paperback as well, which is really good, so you should be able to get copies of those fairly soon as well. But you've got Frontline Combat. I can never get them out, so I'm not even going to attempt to get that out. But they're just classic ones. This one I can probably get out, and there it is. So you can get the two-fisted there. These are just absolutely the finest. They cover not just your standard war, Second World War, of course, but they cover a whole range, Civil War, etc., Indians, and also Romans, whatever. It was not just stuck in particular one period. And I just think the artwork is just, for me, is the best. Absolutely the best. And they're not just stories, they're just sometimes they're very, very unusual stories that maybe just concentrate on one person. There's another bit there. But you've got those, and they're just brilliant. The box sets are just absolute, and they weighs a ton as well. You can see there, 4 volumes. Of course, put it in the wrong way, but that's 4 volumes. Ooh, unfortunately, very sun damaged there. But it doesn't mention in this book much about the Atlas ones. And if you want to find out about Atlas Comics, probably then this volume will be even probably better. Atlas at War, lots and lots of great stuff. I've done a review of this already. It's just, and well, Atlas brought out loads of stuff, war comics, and you can see from there you've got war, battle, combat, battle action, battlefield, battlefront, battle for breakfast, combat, KC, war action, war, and a lot more of this. Young men, war, combat, and so on. Combat, probably in war, men in action. You can see they went for a lot of titles, and they are just really excellent muck. Very, very brutal. Of course, many of the artists probably would have been in the Second World War. They would have experienced that world. So it's, you know, it was only 10 years, 5 years, whatever beforehand. So it's not like they've just come back. It's a lot. So there would have been a lot of experiences for that, and you can see that all the way they've done all these stories. So really, really good book, this one. It's got all the various people, worth checking out. I think that should be readily available still. Hopefully it is. I would love to see a volume 2, volume 3, etc. Now I'm surprised Marvel have never brought out a war omnibus set yet. Would be lovely to see that, but as yet I haven't seen it. Bring Jack Kirby ones, they bring out Ditko ones, but no sort of collection on horror, but no war ones. And they produce loads of war ones. And of course, this is also another great one. If you're looking for sort of war ones, DC Goes to War. Lots of old war stories. Not as many as probably could have been, but they've covered 50s and 60s. But some of the early ones, not so much so. But this book, lots of covers, lots of examples. Men of War, All American Men of War. And some of the titles, of course, come from early ones, All American Comics. You got All American Men of War. Very good, interesting articles. Great one, like say EC, Crypt of Terror, which is very odd to mention. Why include Crypt of Terror? Doesn't make sense. This is a war book. So why put a picture of Crypt of Terror? You would have thought, let's use up all the pictures with ones that are related to war. However, a minor point there. Two-Fisted Tales. And you got here, times were changing, etc. So the articles are quite interesting. Obviously, Korean War, all those sort of things, Vietnam War. Well, obviously not for EC Comics, of course. But Two-Fisted Tale, I mean, look at that classic cover there. I mean, that's just one of the classic ones. Two-Fisted again. That's why I say it doesn't cover just Second World War or Korean, etc. There's Civil War as well as Roman. I love those ones. Roman ones are always great. I mean, that's some of my favourite ones. In the British comics, we get sometimes Roman stories, and I thoroughly enjoy those. Front Night, Master Race, of course, one of the classic ones. They have to include that, of course. However, Enemy Ace, we're on to DC at this point. And this is what I mean about the weird that they haven't mentioned Atlas. Lots and lots about DC ones. You've got Enemy Ace, you've got some classic stories there. Enemy Ace, I Am St. George, etc. And of course, Enemy Ace, more recent, 2001, Garth Ennis, producing lots of classic war comics. Blazing Combat, Warren, absolutely brilliant series. I love that, actually, that Blazing Combat. I don't know why I haven't got my copy of the Blazing Combat. I should get a copy of it, I know. Censored Classics, Blazing Combat. And a bit of mention of Marvel, but not much. Marvel is really sort of like, but Marvel produced Captain Savage. There was other war ones as well. Obviously, they did reprints, etc. with the series of war ones. And Sergeant Fury, of course, classic case in point. Quite a lot of issues, 120, 100, I can't remember. A lot of issues of, and Sergeant Rock, of course, produced lots and lots. And you then go into Charlton, and I love Charlton ones. Army, War Heroes. They're just the weirdest of titles. Fighting Army. Great titles. Sometimes the art was a bit, but, you know, the Iron Corporal, Army, War Heroes. Fighting Army again. Looks like they've got quite a few of the ones that are called Fighting Army. However, War Story Combat. Oh, that's Dell. So Dell also produced, obviously. Actually, that's another thing that's weird. The 50s, they must have, maybe Dell didn't produce thing, but you had Fawcett, of course, all of them, Archie, all of them had sort of some element of war comics. Avon, Farrell, there's loads and loads. There were so many publishers, St. John's, etc. And they haven't really gone through many of those. Some of these have. You've got Foxhole there. There's obviously ID there, it says Foxhole. Now, I don't know what it says here. Oh, that's Mainline Publications. That's the Jack Kirby one. And, of course, you've got a bit of, obviously, Sergeant Fury at that point. But, of course, he didn't do Sergeant Fury forever in that. And then it just moves off that sort of period. So it goes into, obviously, the more modern day ones. And you've got here Greater Comics and Garth Ennis, etc. And some of them are absolutely brilliant. I've been recently getting lots of ones sent to me from Dead Reckoning. Dead Reckoning have been producing lots of classic ones, and I love them. I love them. I know they send me the ones for book reviews, but at the same time, I do genuinely enjoy them. And they've produced this one, Katusha, the girl soldier of the Great Patriotic War. And I was looking online actually to find out, and that's already out of print, it looks like, and very expensive. Well, if not out of print, it's certainly very expensive. War Story and The Punisher. So you've even got sort of this, you know, Punisher gets into this sort of thing, which of course I suppose he is, because Punisher was obviously in conflict, etc. War Stories, Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis turns up quite a lot recently. Garth Ennis. And then where can we find the stuff? And that is always, of course, useful. Here, Blazing Combat is what the writers consider the best single war comic ever produced. Blazing Combat. And that's an archive edition, collects all 4 issues. So worth checking that out as well. And then it's got a long, nice detailed list about all the various things. I always love a little bit, because the trouble is, of course, you end up reading the list and you go, oh no, I've got to buy that as well, or check that out. And you think, oh well. That's one of those things. The best of the real big 5. And it's got other information here, obviously. Oh, it's got the stories here as well, which is really quite good. Their favourite stories. So you can go and check those out as well. Of course, probably some of them are tricky to get, but especially the DC ones. The Marvel ones are a bit easy to get, because Marvel produce lots and lots of collections of things. But DC, not so many. Really struggle to find, unless you look for the showcase books. Showcase, Army at War, etc., Sergeant Rock. They should be relatively reasonably, but even they're out of print now, so they're quite expensive. And you've got acknowledgements here and references at the back, so yet more bibliography, which is always good to check out. So you've got here Two-Fisted Tales, oh, that's the Fantagraphic ones, the black and white ones, worth checking out as well. Now, they've got a John Severin one coming out fairly soon. I hope the distribution is better for that, but I'm not so certain it will be or not. As yet, it's still listed as coming out soon. So, but some of the other ones, like Mac Ratboy, I love that one. That was good. Dingbat Love, excellent. New Gods, and so on and so on. So lots of, and that one's pretty well. Hero, A Go-Go, really worth checking out as well. I love it. Must admit, it's great. Could it be better? Yes. That's the single thing. I think it could have been. I would have loved a 250, 260 page and cover. Sorry, I'm slightly sniffing. I've had the dreaded. You know what? I won't even. I think everyone probably has. So, still After Effects off. But you got it's a great little book, and I'm definitely recommending it. Joe Kubert cover. What can you say? More can you say? Totally recommended.